Welcome to Coahoma Community College's Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning podcast. I am your host, Dr. Ouida McAfee. And today we have with us Dr. Latish Reed. Welcome, Dr. Reed.
Thank you so much, Dr. McAfee, for having me this morning.
All right, I want to tell our audience a little bit about you. Dr. Latish Reed, a senior equity leadership consultant, has a career spanning over 2 decades. She served as the Milwaukee Public Schools' first equity leader hired in January of 2016. In her role, she supported the organization by building the capacity to address issues of marginalization and creating an equity policy that was unanimously passed by the Milwaukee Board of School Directors. During her tenure at MPS, Dr. Reed was also a professional development manager. Before becoming a school district administrator, Dr. Reed was an assistant professor of school administration at both the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, respectively. Her research centered on the cultural and social factors that impact school organization and leadership. Dr. Reed also served as a college admissions counselor, middle school teacher, and school administrator. She received a PhD in educational leadership and policy analysis from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a master's degree in middle school teaching from Alverno College in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology from Marquette University. All right, so let's get started with our topic. Effectively and inclusively engaging students in the classroom. Effectively and inclusively engaging students in the classroom. So Dr. Reed, can you talk to us a little bit about being inclusive as it relates to curriculum and programs?
Absolutely. So, Dr. McAfee, I think one of the things we probably need to get out of the way is the fact that it looks like I only focus on K-12 students. But I've had the opportunity to engage with the Milwaukee Area Technical College here in Milwaukee. So I've become pretty familiar with the challenges that community colleges face. And so I want to share some of the things that I shared with the Milwaukee Area Technical College. First and foremost, what we need to be is student-centered. When we think about what that means, it means we really have to understand and know who the students that we serve are. Oftentimes, we want to make students or the communities that we serve fit into a dominant culture narrative, which is fine. We know that our students must navigate the dominant culture once they leave our institutions or even as they are going through the institutions. However, the first thing that we really need to do is be able to build relationships, connect with them so that we can build that bridge for our students. And that really means thinking about some of the things that might be considered to be part of the dominant narrative. So what we know is that schools are usually set up in ways that are very individualistic. So we have things like, you have to do a paper, you need to come up with this presentation. Testing tends to be an individual activity. A lot of times our programming isn't always conducive to the students that we serve. Thinking about the time that programs start, or even if we have extracurricular endeavors that we're trying to get our students to engage with, are they starting at a time where these adult students will be able to maybe manage the things going on in their lives and participate in the things at school? So really taking a critical look at that to make sure that we are doing programming that would meet the actual needs of our students. Thinking about how we view home language. I know a lot of times I, as a brand new teacher, I came from a very middle class background. I actually participated in a desegregation program back in the 1970s, which afforded me the opportunity to go to the suburban school district. And so I came to understand a certain way of speaking. And when I went into my classroom in the central part of Milwaukee, which was one of the more poor parts of the city, I wanted to drill my students and make sure that they didn't speak in their home language. Well, I think that created distance between my students and me. What I've came to learn is that it's important. If I understand what they're saying and I can build a relationship with them, I can then show them maybe some other ways of speaking when you go on your job interview. But it is crucial that we build relationships and put our students in the center of what we are doing.
Okay. You talk about culture. What are some different ways that you are defining culture, dominant culture?
Well, I think again, there are a couple of different types of ways to look at culture. So there is something called the individualist culture, and then there's the collectivist culture. And about 20% of the world really are a part of that individualistic culture. And this is mostly our viewpoint in the United States. As you know, it's always, I have to get ahead. What is it that I need so that I can get ahead? Really focus a lot on individual achievement and independence. However, 80% of the world really subscribe more to a collectivist culture, which is more of a team approach. So folks that come from Latin American countries, Asian countries, African, Middle Eastern, and some of the Slavic cultures, they actually have this collective mindset. And those cultures are built upon relationships. It is built on community achievement. It's built on cooperative learning. So when we think about the types of activities that we do in our class, if we are only lecturing, we are really not engaging those collectivist cultural mindsets that many of our students may bring into the classroom. So we can think about different ways to set up our classroom. Maybe you start off with a short lecture, but then think about ways to create environments where our students can be engaged in active conversations that pull upon their life experience, thus making them the experts in the classroom. And that will build their sense of confidence. It will boost their morale and make them want to engage in the learning process in a more meaningful way.
Okay, so what are some examples of best practices in the classroom to help to be inclusive?
Well, I think there are a couple of tips that we could use in promoting best practices within our classrooms. It is critical, it's crucial that you start with understanding your students first. And then as there are different topics, curriculum, lesson plans that we're trying to execute, we want to make sure that we provide the foundational definitions for where we're going, and giving those definitions in terms that the students will be able to understand and relate to. Also, we need to remember that even though we might be the facilitator, we don't necessarily have to be the expert. We can listen to our students' perspectives, respect them, even if they don't coincide with our own beliefs. The great James Baldwin said, We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. So thinking about making sure that we respect the differences of opinions that our students may actually have. Also, we want to think about different formats of learning. I am not quite sure where your school is with the whole remote versus in person, but even thinking about ways to effectively engage technology. As you know, after the shutdown, we have become a lot more reliant on technology. And so thinking about creative ways to engage students using technology is really important to engage this current era of student.
Yes. So what is the impact of having an effectively or an effective, inclusive engagement classroom? What's the impact of that on a student?
Well, I think the impact of having engaged students can be translated into retention and matriculation. So often I think about how we as well, and I'm just going to talk a little bit from the standpoint of being a K-12 educator and knowing that I'm working with students, and students K-12, they have to listen to adults in a different way than perhaps adult students at a community college. But when I think about going to a faculty meeting and you see different faculty, teachers not engaged on their phone, there is a reason for that. And that's because they are unengaged. So thinking about how we can do things in our classroom to be engaging, make it relevant so that they are excited about learning their topics. How can we relate them to their home life, the communities where they live, the careers that they hope to be engaged with upon graduation? Making it more relevant for them will keep them in the school and move them towards graduation.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Reed, for being with us today. What final thoughts do you have for us?
My final thoughts that I would love to leave with your community is just that we have to think differently about how we educate our students, because our world has seen so much difference in the last 3 years. So we need to make sure that we are on top of the latest technology trends, that we are knowledgeable about the communities that we serve, and that we understand and work hard to build relationships with our students.
Thank you so much. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can reach me at latishreed1@gmail.com. I am also a member of DeRoot Consulting. Here, it's a cooperative in Milwaukee. I'm consulting with them. And so you can definitely reach me at latishreed@DeRootConsulting.com. And DeRoot is spelled DERUTE, DeRoot Consulting.
Dr. Reed, you wanted to share a framework with us. Please go ahead.
Absolutely. So again, as I mentioned, I am trained as a K-12 administrator, educator, leader. And so I would like to talk a little bit about something that I was able to share and make connections with the community college where I did some professional learning. And that is the culturally relevant pedagogy framework that was put forth by Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings. She's a professor emeritus from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. She is just the creme de la creme of one of our forward-thinking leaders. And she wrote a book called Dream Keepers, and the book really focused on effective ways to engage African American students. However, when we think about this framework, it goes across all types of students that might be considered marginalized. And so there are really three key factors in the culturally relevant pedagogy model. First, it's academic success, and it is having high standards for our students. A lot of times, depending on where we teach, there may be a narrative that could be negative that goes along with that population. And so sometimes we forget that we need to have high standards for our students. They need to be held to a standard where the culture in your classroom is learning. And we think about those students that have the leadership abilities, the students I'm talking about. We want to make sure that we are giving them accolades and affirming their leadership within our class discussions and making sure that we keep the focus on their academic success. We want to make it cool to be in school. Second, we want to be culturally competent about our students. And what that means is we need to understand exactly what they value, what those particular outlets are that they relate to, and think about ways that we can bridge the gap within our curriculum, within our instruction. And then finally, critical consciousness. There should be nothing going on in the classroom that's not related to the lives of our students or the lives that they hope to lead. And what we want to do is show them some of the ways that they can critically think about their circumstance, what's going on in their communities, and how they can be a vessel to work towards a more equitable society, a more equitable community, and more equitable outcomes for them.
That's excellent. Will you share with us an example of the framework?
Well, when I think about something like our cultural competence piece, how can we bring in guest speakers to our classroom that can speak to whatever topic we are teaching? We want to bring in community folks that are experts. So depending upon your subject matter, how can you bring in people from the community to be credible in sharing their experiences and sharing the outlook of the outcomes that they are intending to achieve once they graduate and get into their career. So that would be one example. Also, again, this idea of being critically conscious, depending on your subject matter. If you are in the social sciences, it is important to study historical facts and how historically societies dealt with the different challenges, but how can you make sure that you are bringing current examples of similar things that have happened in the past? So you juxtapose the past with the current and providing action steps and having our students create action steps to solve some of the problems that they may be faced with.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Reed.
Well, you're so very welcome, and it has been my pleasure to work with you. I thank you for all that you are pouring into the faculty and the students at your institution, because I know you poured into my son, and I truly, truly appreciate you.
And that's Zion. I noticed in your bio, you said you are the proud mother of Zion. And Zion is a bright, intelligent, funny young man, and he is the apple of your eye.
He certainly is.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Reed.
You're welcome.